para continuar con nuestras actividades correspondientes al primer seminario internacional. En primer lugar, agradecerle a la persona por el nacimiento. Segundo, como ya había manifestado antes, es interesante o importante y necesario tener los audífonos para la traducción o la traducción correspondiente. ¿Ok? Entonces vamos a comenzar esta segunda parte de nuestra jornada presentando a Neubauer, quien se ocupará del tema Análisis comparativo de sistemas de gestión de seguridad o Safety Management Systems in Comparison. Este tema desarrollado por Timothy está involucrado en las certificaciones correspondientes a nuestro expositor, licenciatura en Seguridad y Salud Ambiental, profesional de seguridad certificado, instructor certificado de seguridad avanzada, gerente de seguridad y salud ambiental, OSA 500, serie 500, instructor para el Instituto de Capacitación de Extensión de OSA. La Asociación de Concreto, expresidente. Por otro lado, Tim Neubauer es ex consultor senior del Consejo Nacional de Seguridad con más de 17 años de experiencia en el campo de la seguridad, después de haber trabajado en la industria en general y en el sector de construcción. Tiene una visión única de peligros y soluciones para superarlos. Entonces yo creo que con esta presentación iniciamos esta segunda parte de nuestra jornada. Timothy, please. You can start, okay? Thank you. Here is a slide changer. Timothy.
I don't think they've, okay.
Change his slides.
Gracias.
Okay.
Buenos días, ¿cómo está? And that concludes my conversational Spanish. My wife, no, not your wife, my wife, thinks it's funny that people pay to hear me talk and she pays me to shut up when I get home. It's a great deal, guys. So welcome to Safety Management Systems in Comparison. Let's talk about what I'm going to talk about for the next hour so that you get an idea of what we're going to talk about. We're going to review the historical perspective of safety management systems. How long have they been around? And how many different kinds there are. We're going to explore the common elements and then contrast
y contrastarlos con las diferencias que tiene cada uno de ellos. Vamos a identificar el mejor sistema de gestión de seguridad para su lugar de trabajo y luego vamos a presentar distintas formas de implementar este sistema. Yo quiero darles a ustedes, como por dónde empieza la película. Ustedes van a encontrar que casi todos los sistemas de gestión de seguridad tienen elementos comunes, pero lo más importante es que sepamos qué sistema se adecua mejor a sus necesidades, porque los elementos generalmente son bastante similares. Si nos remontamos en el tiempo, regresemos a la década de los 50, si yo quisiera. En la década de los 50, después de la Segunda Guerra Mundial, los fabricantes de aviones, las aerolíneas, se reunieron y dijeron, bueno, los aviones están cayendo y eso es malo para el negocio. Entonces, quisieron tener un sistema de gestión de seguridad que fuera común entre los fabricantes de aviones y los pilotos de los aviones. Entonces, ellos hicieron el primer sistema de seguridad que empezó en los 50 en la ciudad.
Basically was. And then in the 1970s, there was an international system that came into place. A guy named Frank Bird came up with this safety management system. It wasn't very comprehensive. It just said,
No era muy integral porque no cubría todo. A finales de los 80,
US OSHA came up
OSHA en los Estados Unidos dijeron, bueno, quisiéramos también recompensar a las compañías que tienen un sistema de gestión de seguridad. Entonces, por ejemplo, la OIT y luego también la Organización de Normas Internacionales empezaron a preparar este tipo de programas ISO. En el 2005, el Instituto de Normas de Estados Unidos, ANSI, publicó la Z10. En la Z10, en el 2005, se presentó un estándar, una norma que a nadie le gustó, era muy difícil de implementar, entraba en conflicto con otras normas y recién 2 años después la pudieron arreglar. Entonces, nosotros teníamos ya la norma de manejo de riesgos en el 2008 y en el 2010 ISO tuvo la gran idea de que si la norma 9000 y la 14000, si ponían a la 18000 en ese mismo grupo, todas estarían cubriendo lo mismo. Les voy a hablar de qué se refiere el alineamiento de las normas. En la sección 3 se habla de la gestión de los registros. Entonces, todas las normas de ISO tienen el mismo alineamiento y eso es lo que hicieron en el 2010, armar un marco de trabajo de ISO, y luego la comunidad de negocios también tuvo un sistema de gestión en el 2012 y posteriormente OSHA tuvo nuevas directrices. ¿Por qué estoy hablando acerca de esto? El programa es gratis, ustedes lo pueden descargar gratis y tiene los mismos elementos que el Z10, que les va a costar algunos dólares. Vamos a hablar acerca de algunos de los programas. ¿Por qué tenemos que tener un sistema de gestión de seguridad? Todos tenemos reglas, tenemos que cumplir las reglas y por lo tanto necesitamos un sistema, porque las reglas nos indican qué cosa tenemos que hacer, pero queremos saber cómo lo vamos a hacer, cómo vamos a lograr éxito, cómo vamos a medir los fracasos, cómo vamos a comunicar las reglas. De eso trata un sistema de gestión de seguridad. Entonces, con estos sistemas podemos reducir el riesgo. No lo podemos eliminar, pero podemos controlarlo y reducirlo. Vamos a reducir los incidentes, los tiempos de para y también los costos relacionados. Vamos a tener también una mejor gestión de seguridad y de salud. Una de las razones por la que yo estoy acá tratando este tema es porque yo era director de seguridad en una empresa y esa empresa posiblemente, bueno, hace 16 años, me contrataron a mí después de que murió uno de sus trabajadores. Los abogados estaban muy preocupados con el cumplimiento y entonces me llamaron y me dijeron, a ver, ¿qué podemos hacer? Entonces yo les hablé de un sistema de gestión de seguridad que ellos necesitaban. 3 meses después les dije, me voy, renuncio. Me preguntaron por qué y era porque realmente no estaban cumpliendo. Me dieron solamente 2 meses para preparar un sistema y yo les decía que no se podía implementar un sistema en un tiempo tan corto. Entonces, uno de mis clientes habló conmigo, conversamos sobre implementar el sistema de seguridad. Yo dije, tenemos que empezar por el paso número 1 en el proceso. Pero la empresa me presionaba para acelerar. Entonces yo les dije que teníamos que hacer ajustes porque había que ver cuál era la realidad actual y dónde querían estar en el futuro. Entonces, más o menos, ellos tenían que pasar por un proceso de 8 meses. Esto nos da como empresa una ventaja competitiva. Todos hacemos lo mismo, trabajamos en la industria minera. ¿Qué cosa nos hace mejores que a nuestros competidores? La entrega de un producto de calidad en el tiempo adecuado y con seguridad. Si podemos trabajar con más seguridad, vamos a tener menos capacitación que dar, menos horas muertas en el trabajo, etcétera. Esa sería una de las ventajas competitivas. Mientras mejor sea su sistema de gestión de seguridad, más rentables van a ser ustedes. Mientras más alta sea la tasa de producción, todos vamos a estar más contentos. Bueno, esta ventaja competitiva también implica demostrar a todas las partes interesadas nuestro compromiso con la salud y la seguridad. Una de las cosas que yo digo es al jefe, si tú inviertes en seguridad, las personas, los dueños, se van a dar cuenta que te importa la organización, te importan las ganancias y por lo tanto te importan los trabajadores se van a sentir mejor, los accionistas se van a sentir mejor, todos van a estar muy contentos. También tenemos que tener este sistema para cumplir todos los requisitos de los reguladores, demostrando el compromiso a un enfoque innovador. Hubo un hombre llamado Charles Darwin hace 50 años y él estudió la evolución de las especies y él dijo algo muy interesante. Lo que él dijo es: los fuertes no sobreviven, sino aquellos que quieren adaptarse. Entonces, tener un sistema de gestión de seguridad, el sistema se ha construido para que uno se adapte al cambio. Hay distintos cambios en regulaciones, hay cambios en los sistemas. Entonces, acá tenemos algunos ejemplos de sistemas de gestión de seguridad que ya existen, que ustedes pueden leer, bajar, comprar. El programa de protección voluntaria de OSHA, conocido como el BPP, es gratis, lo pueden bajar en la red. Es un buen sistema de auditoría, más que un sistema de gestión. Uno no va a saber cómo es su sistema hasta que lo pueda medir, hasta que pueda medir los resultados. El I2P2, que son los planes de prevención de lesiones y enfermedades, se lo puede bajar, ya no está en implementación, pero esto fue reemplazado por OSHA y sus pautas de seguridad y salud en la gestión de programas. Bueno, yo he puesto borrador en rojo en la transparencia, pero ya ha sido publicado. Toda esta información se puede obtener gratis. Y también puede ser una ayuda para crear nuestro propio sistema. Tenemos el ANSI, el AIA, ASSZ10. Ese es el que cuesta unos cuantos dólares para comprarlo. Luego tenemos también los OSHA 18001. Dijeron el año pasado que anticipaban que iba a estar listo para octubre del 2017. Ahora dicen que esto va a estar para octubre del 2018. Se corrige. El ISO 45001 va a estar listo en el 2018 y va a reemplazar al 18001. También existen algunos problemas con el 45001. ¿Cuántos de ustedes en la organización trabajan con ISO, con cualquiera de las normas ISO? La redacción en el 45001 puede ser reemplazada, especialmente en la sección de medio ambiente y calidad. Se han hecho actualizaciones para las que uno tiene que estar en cumplimiento. En la 45001 va a ser realmente una norma obligatoria que involucra la necesidad de tener un sistema de gestión de seguridad. También tenemos una norma militar, la 882E, que también se puede bajar. Es un documento gratis que se puede obtener. Es bastante grande, de cientos de páginas, respecto a sistemas de gestión de seguridad. También tenemos el ACC, que es de cuidado responsable. Por ejemplo, está más enfocado para diseño de hospitales, para la atención de la salud. También tenemos el SOCMA, que tiene mucho que ver con los peligros de los químicos dentro del sistema de gestión de seguridad. Tenemos los 9 elementos del Consejo Nacional de Seguridad. Yo estuve 16 años con esa empresa, tenía más o menos 500 trabajadores, algunos no hablaban inglés y preparamos este documento de 9 elementos. 6 años después, cuando yo regresé, habían disminuido su tasa de lesiones en el trabajo. Y puedo decir que por estos 9 elementos posiblemente tuvieron este resultado. No quiero vincular la reducción de lesiones con los 9 elementos, sino que lo quiero vincular con los sistemas de gestión de seguridad. Cuando el Consejo Nacional de Seguridad habla de 9 elementos, no estaba relacionado con OSHA 18001. El último punto que tenemos es que uno puede construir su propio sistema. Esto depende de ustedes. No necesitan comprar o tomar uno de estos. Ustedes pueden utilizarlos como base, usar lo que les sirve y hacer su propio sistema. Bueno, les estoy pidiendo que dentro de 20 minutos tengan lista la cámara de su celular porque voy a presentar una serie de transparencias de distintos sistemas de gestión de seguridad con puntos de comparación para que ustedes puedan tomar fotografías. Esto va a ser dentro de unos 20 o 25 minutos. Quiero advertirles lo que va a suceder para que estén listos con la cámara del celular en ese momento. Entonces, ahora yo quisiera preguntarles a ustedes, preguntarles, ¿cuántos de ustedes cuentan con un sistema de gestión de seguridad? ¿Pueden levantar la mano, por favor? Señor, ¿podría usted... ¿Cuál es el sistema? Un micrófono, por favor. ¿Qué sistema de gestión de seguridad utilizan ustedes?
No, el sistema de gestión de empresa en la que trabajo.
Management system of the company where I work at is a proprietary system which has been perfectly aligned with ISO 2, based on the 5 requirements of the standard. Tienen un sistema propio alineado con ISO. ¿Alguien más tiene un sistema de gestión de seguridad acá en la sala? A ver, las señoritas, ¿se pueden entregarle el micrófono? Gracias. In the refinery of Southern Peru, we work with the 3 systems: ISO 9001 for quality, ISO 14001 in safety and environment, ISO 181 for safety at work. Muy bien. Y ustedes están utilizándolas todas, entonces. ¿Hay alguien que no tiene este sistema de gestión de seguridad, pero que tampoco quiere tenerlo? Esa pregunta es un poco capciosa. Muy bien. Entonces vamos a hablar del primero que quisiera mostrarles, el OSHA, Programa de Salud y Seguridad, que recién ha sido publicado hace 2 meses. Esta norma tiene liderazgo de la gerencia. Quisiera explicarles a qué me refiero. Y solamente quiero explicarles qué cosa es el liderazgo de la gestión. No se trata de que el líder diga, todos queremos estar seguros. Se trata de demostrar, y esto es algo muy importante. ¿Cómo puede mostrarnos la gerencia de alto nivel que les interesa? No siempre sucede. A veces también tiene que ver con conversar con los trabajadores, preguntarles cómo te está yendo con la seguridad, buen trabajo y cosas como esas. Eso no se necesita mucho dinero para eso, pero los líderes de la organización tienen que hablar con el personal acerca de seguridad. No me refiero a una reunión como esta, sino a ir al piso, visitar a los trabajadores, hablar con ellos. Y eso va a continuar creciendo. Entonces, el liderazgo de gestión no se trata de decir solamente vamos a tener seguridad, vamos a dar mucha capacitación, vamos a invertir dinero, etcétera. Y el liderazgo significa demostrar. Eso para mí es uno de los temas más críticos. Realmente ese es uno de los temas más importantes para mí. La participación de los trabajadores para mí también es uno de los temas importantes. Si los trabajadores no entienden lo que tú estás transmitiendo, no van a tener participación y estamos perdiendo el tiempo.
Sell them on safety. That's the number 2 one in my opinion. The number 3 one is hazard identification and assessment. If you do not have something that says, hey, that's dangerous, don't put your finger in there. If you don't have something like that to identify hazards, you're just kind of walking around waiting for it to happen and reacting. Nobody likes that. The next one is hazard prevention and control. I like to call that kind of after you've identified the hazard, it is more in line with how are you going to fix it. And you want to have a common system of how you report problems and how you fix them. So that you're not just saying, hey, you guys do this, you guys do this, which is the best way to do it. So this is a system that says, once you identify it, how do we fix it? So we fix it once for everybody, not fixing it 1,000 times. Why is there always time to fix the screw up? But there's never time to do it right the first time. Education and training. This is there's a joke I want to tell. I don't know if it's going to go over in Spanish. Let's try it. We good? Let's try it. What's the difference between training and education? Let me explain it to you. I won't even let you answer the question. Would you like your teenage daughter going through sex training in school or sex education? I stole that from somebody else. I'll tell you his name. You can blame him. Training teaches you to do a task. I train you to push a button. I train you to operate a machine. I educate you on all of the nuances of that machine, and that education allows you to operate the machine, and if problems come up, you have a skill set and knowledge to draw from, and hopefully you make the right decision. So I don't like the word safety training, I want safety education, because I want you to educate your employees. Program evaluation, if you don't measure your program, you have no idea if it's working or not. None at all. You're just guessing. If I was to audit myself, I am awesome. But if somebody else audits me, I don't know how it's going to look. So if you do not audit yourself or have somebody else audit you, you have no idea if your safety program is working. You might say that it has been working great for 5 years. Gosh, I'd like to come visit you for a small fee and see just how wonderful it is. I love doing things like that. I visited a customer who said that his last safety consultant had not found a single hazard in 5 years. I was on page 7 in the first hour, and I thought the guy was going to have a heart attack. I wasn't trying to be hard, but there was a lot of stuff. So, coordination, communication of multi-employer work sites. This is a huge one, and it's called a lot of different things in safety management systems. If you have another company that works on your facility, or you work on somebody else's site, you have to have something that says, when I'm on site XYZ, that we're going to follow their rules, and my employees know those rules, or they're going to follow my rules. You have to have some way of making that decision. Because if you don't have that procedure in place, that means nobody follows any rules, or you follow two conflicting rules. So, management leadership, we talked about communicate, your safety and health program. If you are senior management, I won't ask you to raise your hands, but let me give you this example here. Your job is basically to sell the company. That's what senior management does, they sell the company. Well, your job is to sell safety and health to the employees too. And if you're a mid-level manager, your job is to sell safety and health to the employees. Frontline managers, their job is to sell going home alive every single night to the employees. Not saying we follow this rule because the boss said so. We follow the rule because I want you to go home to your wife, kids, your husband, your dogs. So management needs to define program, goals, and expectations. One of the big things managers love to do, don't we? I set goals, I have expectations. You will get this done by next week. You will have this done by the end of the third quarter. When I set those goals, I hold them accountable. You have to do the same thing for safety. But be very careful when you're setting a goal for safety, because you don't want to set a goal that is a reactive goal. Let me give you an example. 0 injuries. Now that is the goal of safety, right? Nobody getting hurt. But basically, it really doesn't matter what you do. Nothing you do is going to prevent Juan from putting his finger in the machine. Nothing you do. You can train him, you can supervise him, you can give him bonuses, but nothing is going to stop him from putting his finger in the hole. It's his own decision to not put his finger in there, right? Because he needs to put a guard on it. What does Jose do? He takes it off. I live in the United States. I live down south, and we don't use Jose and Juan for examples. It's always Bubba. Everybody who does something stupid, his name is Bubba. So if you don't mind, I'm going to continue to use Bubba for the rest of the day. Bubba's always my example of the guy who puts his finger in the hole. So management has to sell, and you have to set expectations. So here's what I want you to do. Stop saying, I'm going to reward you for not getting hurt, because isn't your job not to get hurt to begin with? So I'm going to reward you for not doing something that you weren't supposed to do. So that's where management really has a problem. Is a reward for lack of a negative, and that was the original goal to begin with. So here's what you have to do. What did the employee do to prevent the injury or prevent the event from happening? I'll give you an example. A job hazard analysis. How many do they do, and how good are they? That is a goal that management says, hey, we do 1 a week, I want 1 a day for the third quarter. I want all the training done for the year, and I want the students to pass at a certain rate, and I want it done by the end of the first quarter or the second quarter. Those are proactive things. Training, inspections, job safety observations, JSO, I love them. This is where a peer, a regular old worker, goes up to another worker and says, I watched you work. Good job. And can you tell me why you didn't have your glasses on? It's peer-to-peer. But if everybody's watching out for everybody else, you don't have a problem. And it all comes right down to management communicating goals and expectations. Then giving adequate resources, allocate resources. Let me explain that to you too. I have a customer right now that says, we need to get all of our training done by next week. We have to shut the whole company down, work 2 shifts. People would be 12, 14 hours in the classroom. That is not the appropriate resources. He needs to schedule more days over more weeks so we don't do this all at once, okay? And then expect performance. Managers, I don't know how this works down here for you guys, I don't know how it works. You have a manager who breaks every safety rule but has the highest production rate. Does anybody have that kind of a worker? Some people almost raise their hand. You know those guys. They get the job done, but they break every rule there is to get it done. And they say, I can't discipline that guy. He's my best guy. And I say, he's your worst guy because he breaks every safety rule. When it happens, it's going to be a big one. So expect performance and hold people accountable. Worker participation. We need to talk about encouraging workers to report safety health violations. I deal with this every day. Employees don't want to report. Because in the United States, we buy you a pizza party if you go a month without somebody getting hurt. We buy pizza on Friday. And nobody wants to report an injury because we don't get a pizza party. I know it's stupid. So I stopped buying pizza parties, and they all say I'm a jerk. Well, I said report the hazards, and we hit a certain level of reporting and correction. I'll buy the pizza parties, not for reporting the incident, but reporting the hazard. Encourage workers to participate in their programs. You shouldn't be setting rules, and when a safety management system is put in place, you should select employees from all levels and have them say, hey, we're going to write new safety rules. We got to follow the standard. But how are we going to do it? Help us make new rules. It's actually a really effective tool to get workers involved. Give workers access to safety and health information. I go out to a lot of different companies and a lot of different industries, and I'm often shocked when I pull out an inspection form, because I'll ask to use your inspection form, and I will hand it to an employee, and they've never seen it. I say give every single employee the inspection form, let them see it, and I rarely do inspections, by the way, because what I do is I say, hey, Bubba, come here. Here's this form right here. Tell me what I'm looking for. Tell me what I'm looking for here. What kind of machine guarding do you need on this machine? And I let him do the inspection. And the next time I go out there, I grab Bubba's cousin, Bubba Jr. The next time I go out, I get his next door neighbor, Bubba 3. It gets them into the safety and health information. They know where to get things. Remove barriers to participation, which means take away the management filter or bias. So when we talk about hazard identification now, we're talking about hazard identification assessment. Collect existing info about workplace hazards. If you walk around, open up your eyes, your ears, get a good view of the workplace. Inspect the workplace. If there's an incident, no matter how minor, investigate it. I can tell you a great story about this company that burned down a $25 million testing facility. And they didn't know the definition between a near miss and an actual incident. They had a near miss that occurred 300 times when it occurred once. 300 times. And they ignored it 300 times until it burned down a $25 million testing facility. Then it was a big deal all of a sudden. But they ignored it. So you need to investigate everything to determine the root cause. Because if you can solve a minor problem when it is a minor problem, you can save the entire facility. Identify hazards associated with emergency and non-routine situations. So if something happens in an emergency, or you have a large spill or electrical shutdown, and you have to do unusual work under unusual conditions, that's a great time for you to have a plan. Characterize the nature of identified hazards. This is talking about, can I rank a hazard 1 through 5? So if I can rank a hazard 1 through 5, 1 means I got a boo boo on my finger, go back to work. 5 means I'm going to die. And then I say, how often do I do that on a scale of 1 to 5? 1, once a year. 5, every day, all the time. And I say that if I have a hazard that will kill me and I do it every day, hey, that's a 10. On a scale of 1 to 10, I can't do that job unless I get somebody else involved to think of a new plan. But if I do it once a year, it only gives me a boo-boo on the finger, you should go to work. That's what we're talking about there. There's actually a couple of really good systems out there. ANSI has one. And write this one down. AHA. It's 3 letters. AHA. If you Google that, AHA and the letters EH, that's E as in Edward, H as in hotel, 385. That's a form. And it's a really good form. It does exactly what that said. It's a free form. What I like about that form is you get it in Word, PDF, and you can fill it out online. And it basically does that little math I just explained to you. So hazard prevention controls. Talked about this. I told you that once you identify it, how are you going to fix it? Select a control, develop how you're going to fix things, And then you're going to verify that your fix actually worked. Education and training we've talked about. Provide training program awareness, train workers on specific roles, and train workers in hazard identification, how to fill out that form. Program evaluation, we've talked about the audit end of this already. Verify program is implemented and operating. By the way, an audit doesn't look at extension cords, ladders, fire extinguishers. An audit looks at your procedure, that written procedure that we do X, Y, Z. And then I read what your procedure is, and I go out to the field and I ask one of your workers, tell me what to do if this happens. And can they tell me? Not necessarily repeat it, but if they can say, that is in our book, and the book is in the foreman's office near the entrance to the workshop, and he can go out there and put his hand on it and knows how to find it, then you get a pass. But so many times people say, I don't know. I think we got a procedure, and then that doesn't work. Coordination, communication, we'll hold and put our work sites. I kind of covered this earlier. Once again, it needs management leadership, so the heads of both companies need to be talking. Workers from both companies need to talk. Hazard identification needs to be the same between the two entities. Prevention control. Site orientation, if you're going to bring a subcontractor or a vendor onto your facility, they need some kind of training. I was in Elko, Nevada. I know you've all heard of it, right? Trust me, 99% of Americans have never heard of Elko, Nevada. But they mine gold there. And when I showed up, they said, Tim, you don't need to go through safety orientation because you're the safety guy. And I said, wait a second. I need the orientation because I've never been here before in this gold mine. And I kind of want to know which way to run, where the assembly point is, and you give out free samples. You know, they didn't laugh at that. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Z10 now. We left the OSHA Safety Health Management Program. We're talking about Z10. Z10, I like this one because there's a couple of books out on the Z10 and how to implement it. So if you say, gosh, here's the standard, how do I do this stuff? There's a lot of material out there to say how to do it. So it basically starts off with scope, purpose, application, definitions, management, leadership, employee participation, planning, implementation, evaluation, corrective action, management review, and then the appendices, which give you all that great information, including that chart that I told you about, the AHA. So, Section 3 of the ANSI standard talks about management, leadership, and participation. Guess what? It's the same as what we just talked about for the last one. Same titles, same checkbox, same information. What's a little different here is planning. In the ANSI Z10, planning says, what are you going to do? And let's talk about this way before you actually do it. A great example, you're going to buy a new machine. We'll call it machine 1. Planning says, hey, before we buy machine number 1, let us consider, does it need additional guarding for what we're going to use it for? Do the operators need additional training? Because let's get it done before it shows up. Are there maintenance requirements that I need to consider before we buy this machine? That's all part of the planning process in safety. Does this machine require a special fluid? And that fluid requires us to wear a full body rubber suit with a scuba respirator. Great question to ask before you buy this thing, right? That's one of the things that Z10 is really good at. Section 5 of the Z10 standard is basically, I'm going to call this your safety manual, your current existing safety manual. It's the operational elements. What do you do? How do you do it? Hierarchy of control. If there's a problem, how do you fix it? Design review and management of change, which goes right back to, if I have a problem, how do we fix it, and how do I make sure it doesn't happen again? Procurement is a very funny word for buying things. With the global harmonization system, the GHS, you have to have a safety data sheet for every chemical, right? See? If you don't have purchasing under control, your books are going to be huge. Because you have to know what chemicals you have in house. So procurement is purchasing. Can I control my purchasing of chemicals? Can I control my purchasing of equipment, of personal protective equipment? And actually, contractors should be in procurement, because if you hire a subcontractor, how do you know that person knows their job? So that's part of procurement. If you're going to hire a welding company to come in and do some work on conveyor belts, don't you kind of want to know they know what they're doing? That's part of purchasing, procurement, contractors. Emergency preparedness, where's your emergency action plan? We're back on to education training again. Communication is in this section, and documentation and record control process. I see about 5 to 10 safety manuals a week. That's 2 a day. And I can tell you that probably 75% of the time I'm presented 2 copies, and they say one of these is the most up-to-date one. And they don't know. I had one person actually hand me 4 and said, pick the best one you think will pass the audit. What we're talking about document and record control is that every form that you fill out has some kind of method of saying, this form is the most current form as of March 28, 2017. It has to have some method, your manual has to have some method of saying this is the most current version. And that's where ANSI really comes into play here, because if you have 2 different versions of a procedure, or a manual, or a rule, which one do you follow? Guys in the field don't know. Guys on actually doing the work, they don't know. It's up to you guys. That's one of the things Z10 has in there. Section 6, evaluation and corrective action. This is once again something we've already talked about. This is how bad is it, and what can we do to fix it. Section 7 of the ANSI standard is the management review, which is the audit and the inspections. So let's go to the OSAS 18001, which is the safety standard right now for ISO and OSAS all over Europe internationally. You're going to see this in a much better picture coming up here in a minute, but basically this is the table of contents. And a lot of this stuff is redundant from what I've already talked about. However, in section 4 of 18001, it does talk about general requirements. Now this is the first time it's mentioned general requirements, that's why I'm talking about it. So this says, what are our general rules? Let's talk at a high level, what's our general rules? And then 4.2 talks about what is our policy? Now I know what your policy is. We're going to make the highest quality product on time to customer specifications safely. Or you're going to safely do all that stuff, right? So they actually want you to have a policy statement. And your policy statement says, we here at XYZ Mining, we will deliver the highest quality product to the mill on time, under budget, and we are only willing to do it if our employees can do it safely. We will not compromise our safety to deliver this product. That would be a different kind of a policy statement. And then we get into planning, which we've already talked about planning. Hazard identification is the same. And then we talk legal and other requirements. Now this is actually something that would be in your policy statement. You have to say, we will follow the regulation that governs us in this region. And you have to have a way of saying that you're going to do that in the OSAS. And then you have to have objectives and programs, which is your safety manual. Implementation operation, once again, this is back down to your safety manual. Resources, roles and responsibilities. Now here's a new one. Roles and responsibilities. Every single employee from the president down to the lowest laborer, they have to have job responsibilities in relation to safety. Well, ultimately, the CEO or the president, they're responsible for the overall safety of the whole company, providing resources and time. What's the worker's responsibility? To follow rules and report hazards. Work safety, those are employee responsibilities. And then we have accountability, which is what are you going to do if they don't follow the rule? 4.42, competency is another great one to talk about. In OSAS, they start talking about, is the employee competent to do their job? That you've done some kind of training and then measure or test to make sure they're competent to do their job. Communication, participation is redundant. Documentation, control of documents is the same as ANSI. Operational controls and emergency preparedness, once again, we're covering ground we've already covered. Checking, performance and measurement and monitoring, evaluation, these are all redundant. Investigation is redundant, control of records, this is all the same as it was before. Let's move to 45,001. This is the new kid on the block. This is the new big one. It's not even out yet, so the questions that come up, you guys are going to say, hey Tim, tell me about 45,001. I'm going to say, sure, I'll tell you what I know, which is what I read in the last 30 days, but literally it's changing as I'm talking, they're changing. And they can't even say the new standard will be out for review on March of 2018 or October 2018. That's what they said in their last press release a couple of days ago. One or the other, choice is yours. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what's going wrong with this here in a second, but I want to cover the most recent changes. Okay? So one of the things they talk about is the context of the organization. They want your safety management system to match your organization. Okay? Now I told you I look at 5 to 10 manuals a week. And this isn't a commercial for me. This is what I do for a living. People come up and they say, hey Tim, here's my manual, take a look at it, see what we can do. And I see, and I cannot make this up, cannot lie. I will see insert company here in your document at least once, where they bought their manual from some website and downloaded it and they didn't insert their company name. I see other companies' names in company safety manuals almost on a daily basis. So one of the things that ISO 45001 is saying is that you have to say, this is what we do, and here's our safety management system, and why. So they're forcing you to tailor it to your organization. Understand the organization is context, so you have to have an org chart, you have to have a process flow, understanding the needs and expectations of the workers, so now you have to have goals for employees, goals for management, determining the scope of the management system, what is it going to cover, and then it starts getting the leadership participation. By the way, that section 4, that's what's killing this thing. They put it out for comment last year, and they were hoping to get maybe like 50 or 100 people say, yeah, I like it, or maybe we should tweak this word. And they got like 20,000 people say, I don't want section 4. So they'd say, whoa, hey, stop. Let's back this thing up. Let's talk a little bit. Section 5, leadership, worker participation. And actually, for the first time in any standards, 5.4, a really big thing to talk about is, it talks about consultants. What role do they have? Do you use them or not? Now, I would tell you, you should use a consultant, but then again, I'm a consultant. You know what the definition of a consultant is? He'll tell you the time using your watch. That's the definition of a consultant. He looks at your watch and tells you what time it is. When you think about that tonight when you're in your second beer, it's going to make sense to you. Because they just look at what you're already doing, and say, yep, it's right or it's wrong. So planning, this is something else we talked about earlier with 18,001. There is a planning to address risks and opportunities. Support resources, competencies has showed up for the second time. Operational controls, well, this goes right down to your safety manual again, but it actually talks a little bit about procurement and then contractors, which we've already talked about, and emergency preparedness. Performance evaluations is your audit, but it goes a little farther than that because it does a general analysis and then a specific analysis with objectives and the audit process clearly spelled out, and then management review. So with the exception of section 4, this is pretty much a rehash of 18 with some extra stuff thrown in to make it look pretty. I want to talk a little bit about 10.1 because this is actually something that I'm hoping to change the entire world. When you have someone that gets hurt, do you say they've been involved in a workplace accident? Just raise your hand if the answer is yes. You call it an accident? How many of you call it an incident? I'm asking you to call it a safety non-conformance. Now, ANSI Z10 calls it a safety non-conformance. 18,001 doesn't, but 45,001 does. An accident is an unfortunate event that results from completely unavoidable causes, which means why would I even investigate? There's nothing anybody could have done. That rarely happens. If I get in a cab tomorrow and I'm driving to the airport and somebody runs a red light, hits me, hey, I'm a passenger. My cab driver didn't run the red light, somebody else did. It must be an accident. And I say, no, it is not. It is an incident, a preventable incident, because the other person could have not ran the light. Now, there's nothing I could have done. But if I really want to find out why things happen, I don't always look at it from my point of view, I look at it from every point of view. Now, if we're taking the incident and say, the incident actually isn't even an incident, it's a non-conformance, because I'm betting you guys have a law down here that says, don't run red lights. See? Don't run red lights. You have that rule. So, somebody didn't conform with the rule. You had a safety non-conformance. An employee gets something in their eye because they didn't have their safety glasses on. Guess what? They didn't conform to the rule that you have, which is your safety glasses. So I want you to think about this and stop having accidents and incidents and start having non-conformances. And if you're going to use a discipline policy, it's really easy to say, Bubba, you don't wear your glasses, I'm going to send you home for 2 days. Or, we're documenting a safety non-conformance of procedure. The procedure was to wear glasses, and you didn't do that, so we're going to take administrative action against you because you didn't conform to the procedure. It's a lot less confrontational. Still want to fire Bubba. So once again, ISO 45001 is heavily derived from 18001. It's integrated with all the other ISO standards, which means section 1, 2, 3 all line up. With 9,000 and 14,000, promote management risk, promote the management of risk and the required risk management process. Now, probably one of the big things to understand what this one is that you can't solve all risk or all hazards. What you're really doing is you're managing them, and this system is geared towards that. In the context of organization, they consider stakeholders, customers, and contractors. That's one of the catch points right there, folks. That's the one that's getting us. The basis of the management system approach applies is found in the concept of plan, do, check, act. You guys have heard that one before. That's been around since the 1950s. That's part of Deming's quality philosophy. Greater emphasis on assessing the opportunities, especially the use of safe design that allows management systems to be more flexible. So what we're talking about right here is they put a lot more emphasis on planning before you begin work. That is probably the biggest point off of that slide. Some challenges, I've already talked about accident, incident, non-conformance. Risk and the risk matrix I've already talked about. Corrective action. So once we have an incident or a hazard, now we have to actually take corrective action. Now, if you live in the world of 9,000 and 14,000, you already know that you have a corrective action report. That would be my next step, is after you have an incident or a near miss, that you have a formal process to say, this is how I'm going to fix it. Continual improvement and continuous improvement are the semantics of the word. I don't know how it's going to play going from English to Spanish. So Continual improvement means we're always looking to improve. And continuous improvement is you're always in the improvement process, which means you might have one improvement and you've taken 14 years to do it. Versus the other one, which is once we solve the problem, we move to the next one, Hierarchy of control is the last thing on this slide we're going to talk about. The hierarchy of control is the first thing you want to do is engineer the problem out. You want to engineer the problem out. The last thing you do is give PPE. If an employee is wearing safety glasses, it means you could not take away the eye hazard. And I'm going to trust you to wear them, how to wear them, when to wear them, and at the right time. I'm trusting you to do all that stuff. This is just a little bit about the 45,001 committee. I don't think that that's a good use of our time. I want to go to, I'm going to skip a couple slides right here because I've already talked about all this. The proposed timetable I've already talked about. Okay, so what's common amongst all these elements? This is something I want to get to before we get those slides. I promised you I'd show you. Safety and health policy statement is pretty much on 5 of them. Management leadership, worker participation, responsibility, accountability, planning, objectives, measurements, management review, management change. These are all the things in here. But here's what you guys want to take pictures of. So get your phone ready. It's going to be about 9 slides in a row. I'm not really going to talk about them. I just want to show you so you get them. If you were to put Z10, 18,000, 45,000, and the new OSHA program side by side and say, what do they have and what are the numbers? This is where it starts. I'm going to give you about 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Take a picture of this. Give you about 5 more seconds. This is a side by side. I'm going to give you about 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The next slide. Give you about 5 seconds here. After I take your pictures. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Next one. Told you about 8 or 9 of them here. 5, 4. Your phone's gonna die. 3, 2, 1. Next slide. 5, 4. You guys are getting good at this. They can go faster. 3, 2, 1. We got a couple more to go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You know why I'm doing this, right? Because I don't have rights to give you the layout of Z10. So if you take a picture of my slide, I'm not reproducing it, you're doing it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Got more to go, keep going. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Still going. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What's killing us is the OSHA rules are really long. Last picture you're taking. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Great. How do we move forward now? You guys have all the information you need. Now, how do you move forward? How do you implement this stuff? Well, many safety professionals fail to speak in terms of benefits. Let me explain this to you. You got to sell safety people. You got to sell management and why a safety management system is so important. It's easy to do. Safety doesn't cost money. It saves you money. It saves you incidents, injuries, damage to equipment, lost time, replacing workers. There's a whole boatload of reasons why it saves you money. You gotta sell it. You gotta sell it. Benefits of the company or location. Hey, you know what? We have 6 locations, and I want my location to be the best. If we implement a safety management system, boss, you will win. I would love to show you a picture of my house. Have you ever heard the slogan, safety pays? You ever heard that slogan? I'd love to show you a picture of my house. I have a huge brick, I'm gonna call it a mansion, 4,000 square feet. I live in a country club district. And the reason I'm telling you this is a long time ago, I was a laborer picking up metal and building scaffold. And one day somebody said, hey Tim, we need somebody to go to some stupid safety class so you can be our safety rep. We had a 25-cent raise and a $100 bonus we hit our numbers. 6 months later, I got my third plant I was a safety rep for. That's 25, 50, 75 cents, and a $300 a month bonus. I never went back to being a laborer again, and now I get to fly down here to beautiful Lima, Peru, and give speeches to people. And I got a big house in the country. So when I'm talking about benefits management, heck yeah, if I hit my numbers, people give me money. They give me raises. Benefits to the supervisor, I already told you that. Benefits to the employee, they get to go home alive. I'm all into that. So reactive versus proactive, I've already talked about this a little bit. Reactive system is, gosh, we had an incident, let's do something. So you randomly, when something bad happens, you react. We're going to follow the rules where I'll fire somebody, that's very reactive. Task-oriented, but on the proactive side, let's look at our whole system, let's get this done. Best practices, we always want to get better. Common mistakes, many safety professionals fail to provide guidance and leadership. You are the chief salesperson, safety person. You've got to be the one who says this is the best system. Now, does anybody remember what I told them was the best system was? I told you right off the bat which one I thought it was, because it has the most information out there to help you implement it. It was Z10, but frankly, the 45,000 one is probably going to be a really good option once it's out. So how do we choose? If you're already an ISO company, stick with ISO. If you deal with US-based OSHA, hey, that's a great option. Stick with the OSHA management guidelines. International organizations, ISO is kind of the bottom line. US-oriented, so if you have a US operation or you're based in the US, ANSI Z10 is the only nationally recognized safety management system in the United States. Yes, not even OSHA is nationally recognized. Or if it makes sense, build your own. Like this gentleman did, he built his own, that's great. Build your own, it doesn't matter. You know what the common elements are. So, creating your own, some of the pros are, it's very specific to you. Probably the biggest con is you have to have a method of auditing it. So you have to build your own methodology of how you're going to audit. Many safety professionals fail to conduct a baseline assessment. You cannot implement a safety management system until you do a baseline assessment. Very first thing I do with all my customers is I do an audit to see where they are. Because if you have 2/3 of the safety management system in place and you don't even know it, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I don't want to change. So you got to start with an audit. Take a picture. Awesome flow chart. Took me 8 hours to build this thing on this slide. Awesome flow chart. I printed it in a really big piece of paper, hangs on the wall in my office. And when I pick up a new client, I start right here. Boom! So we talk about baseline assessment. Many safety professionals fail to develop improvement plans. So, you want to go back? I'll give you a second. Take that again. Take that again. So, baseline assessment we talked about. Once you're done with the first year, you got to think about next year. 3 years. So, as soon as we're done with 2016, we should have had our 2019 and 2020 plan. You got to look to the future, otherwise this thing's going to crash. It's a long-term project. Let's see here. I want to talk about this slide, then I'm going to go to my end here. The journey to safety excellence is a journey. I have a GPS. It sits in the dash of my truck, and I say, her name is Samantha. I talk to my GPS, and I say, wake up, Samantha. Please take me to some place to eat, and then she'll give me guidance. But if it's a really long trip, at some point along the way, she'll say, recalculating. And when she says recalculating, then I have to change route. The same thing, the journey to safety excellence is you have to recalculate sometimes. So the first phase of journey to safety excellence is what is safety? Gosh, don't shut us down. We always work in compliance. Don't shut us down. Then incidents cost too much. But then you know when the culture changes, when you start saying this isn't a value, it's a priority. And then when it says that safety is excellence, is instinctive, then you know you really came down the road there and you are in that the journey to safety excellence. So I'll put my information up here on the board for you, right there. Thank you so much for your time. You've been a wonderful audience. And I will hand it back over to our esteemed moderator.
Okay, thank you very much. Preguntas, por favor. Teníamos unos 5 minutos para preguntas.
Questions? I was out of time, but I don't want to cut that original this time. If you have a question, or you can see me afterwards on the phone.
O prefiero preguntarle directamente a ti.
Sir, question over here.
Okay, el micrófono.
Okay, I need my headphones.
Señor Mesa, por favor, audífono para ti.
Need my headphones.
Ah,
No hablo. Yes.
Buenas tardes, Marco Chirinos, felicitaciones por su exposición, bastante interesante ver esto de los sistemas. Mi inquietud va al tema de si tenemos ya implementados sistemas de gestión y seguimos teniendo eventos de accidentabilidad, ¿cómo considera la importancia de implementar un programa de seguridad basada en comportamiento para poder lograr un cero accidentes?
Performance-based safety program. You are never going to eliminate all behaviors. So if you're still having them, you need to consider why your system's not working. So doing a performance-based system would be an alternative to solving the problem. Well, I would go back and say, what's the root cause? Why do these injuries keep happening? Where is our system not working? If I'm understanding your performance-based system right, you're going to say no injuries, get something else, and I'm saying that is ultimately, if you're rewarding no injuries, you're ultimately rewarding the wrong thing. Performance-based system should reward what you did to prevent the injuries. Unless I missed your point, sir.
Básicamente es seguridad básicamente en comportamiento, behavior.
Okay, so you're talking about behavior-based performance system. Absolutely. I'm completely in agreement that if you don't have the employees buy into this, which is behavior-based, it's not going to work. It's literally not going to work. You cannot force somebody to do something every day, day in, day out. They will do what they want to do when you're not looking. Good. Any other questions?
Okay, ¿alguna otra pregunta? La última pregunta, por favor.
These ladies need some work.
De todas maneras, quiero que permite, si hubiera alguna pregunta adicional, después puede ser, they can ask you later on, okay? Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Aplauso, por favor.